Rock and roll in the 1950s. What is rock and roll? Rock and roll is a genre of music that is primarily composed of country, western swing, and rhythm and blues. In early rock and roll music, a piano or saxophone was usually the lead instrument, but as the genre evolved, instruments like the bass, guitar, and snare drums were added. Who did rock and roll influence? The teenager, of course. Rock and roll music became an instant hit amongst teenagers in the 1950s for three main reasons. The first, no more conformity. Teenagers in this era were taught to be obedient, and had no outside sources telling them that they could behave otherwise, until the rise of rock and roll. Second, rock and roll made teens feel rebellious. Naturally, their parents were outraged by this new type of music, and some even tried to have radio stations shut down for playing it. This didn't faze the kids at all. In fact, the more their parents told them no, the more they said yes. Third, rock and roll gave teenagers a chance at self-expression. Up until this time in history, teenagers were overlooked. You went from being a child to being an adult. But this music gave teens a reason to act their age. Some other reasons for rock and roll's success include the radio's attempt at survival by playing more rock and roll music, and the increasingly popular television shows American Bandstand and The Ed Sullivan Show, as seen here. Both featured rock and roll musicians. Where did rock and roll originate? It is believed that rock and roll was created in southern USA, when many African Americans migrated into cities to find work. When was rock and roll created? Rock and roll was created during a time in which many African Americans migrated into cities to find work. It was this work that put them in close proximity with white people and their music. A merger occurred, and rock and roll was born. Why was rock and roll so popular? Rock and roll was such an instant hit with the younger population because it gave them a way to express all of the emotions they were feeling, which had not been available before this creation. It made them feel understood. Rock and roll's historical significance lies with the youngsters. Rock and roll helped define the difference between youth and adulthood. It inspired teenagers to be rebellious, and had it not been for the push rock and roll music provided, teenagers today could still be facing that kind of conformity.